Skip, have you got how it works, please?
Good morning. My name is Skip. I'm a recovering addict.
Skip.
Here's how it works. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. Number one, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. Two, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Three, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Four, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Number five, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Six, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Seven, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Eight, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take a personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicted in one day, so remember, easy does it. There is one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance towards spiritual principles. 3 of these that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. With these, we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the disease of addiction is completely realistic, for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. We feel that our way is practical, for one addict can best understand and help another addict. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society, in everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from returning to active addiction is not to take that first drug. If you're like us, you know that one is too many and 1,000 never enough. We put great emphasis on this, for we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we release our addiction all over again. Thinking of alcohol as different from other drugs has caused a great many addicts to relapse. Before we came to NA, many of us viewed alcohol separately, but we cannot afford to be confused about this. Alcohol is a drug. We are people with the disease of addiction who must abstain from all drugs in order to recover.
Thank you, Skip. The format of this meeting is that on alternate weeks there is a step reading or a step share. This week is a step share, and Paul is going to share on step 12 for about 20 minutes. And step 12 is, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. My name's Paul, I'm an addict. Yeah, it's good to be in a meeting. I was just thinking 20 minutes to talk about step 12. I probably need about 2 weeks to kind of just express some of my experience of it, you know. And I've been kind of a bit lapsadaisical lately with my prayer and kind of and my connection with God. So I'm just going to mention God right at the beginning so I don't forget, because I've done shares before and I've forgotten to mention God, who is a major part of my recovery, you know, and without God there is no recovery for me. Anyway, so I've handed that over and we'll see what comes out. Yeah, step 12, you know, I love that over by the door as I walked in, all that primary purpose, because I need to see it about 8 or 9 times to kind of let it resonate with me a little bit, and because that's what I thought coming to NA. You know, I come to NA and what I tell you now is all on hindsight. Most of it's on hindsight. At the time when I came to NA, I come into these rooms and I was hopeless, beaten, had no direction, no God, no understanding of a way out of my misery and despair. And I walked into these rooms, and what I see here was a completely different thing to what I'd known. You know, my whole life had been involved in using drugs, getting drugs, ways and means to get more drugs, hurting people in that pursuit. And I guess my primary purpose was, you know, the getting and using. And I walked into these rooms, and what I encountered were people drinking coffee, smiling, talking to each other, and relatively normal as I perceived then, you know. And they were dressed well, they were clean, they'd had watches, you know, they'd, you know, maybe have lives, you know. And I guess that was, you know, the first awakening of any kind of spirit that was, you know, somewhere alive in me, you know. I think the first awakening of the spirit for me was when I actually thought about whether I wanted to live or not. You know, I thought about suicide, and I thought about a way out. I tried to think my way out of my addiction over a number of years. I tried many different kind of routes, many different solutions. You know, I tried to become an alchemist, you know, to mix my drugs. I tried to, being locked up in strip cells to keep me away from drugs. Nothing could stop me using. But when I actually got in touch with this program, I've told this story a million times, I ain't got time to tell it now, but basically it was put on me, and it was like, do you want to live or you want to die? You know, that was the kind of the short and tall of it all, and I heard that, you know. And I'm a textbook addict, you know. I've got the hearing problem, I've got the thinking problem, you know. So, but that, when I come in here and I heard, you know, do you want to have a life or do you want to die? Because that's what, you know, you've got to take this stuff seriously, you know. This is a serious business, recovery, you know. And there's a responsibility that comes with it when you walk in that door, you know. I was unaware of all this. What I knew, I see a few people and I see a kind of a kindred spirit in there, you know, and that was the primary purpose. You know, the therapeutic value of the one addict helping another, the one addict being there for another, and that comes in a million ways, you know. That's why it's such a short amount of time to do this chair, because my experience has kind of grown, you know, as my clean time has grown and as my recovery has grown. First of all, when I first come in here, I heard people, and I don't know whether I had selective hearing, but more than likely, and I'd heard people say, well, you know, they kind of divide the two. They divide up recovery and then their lives. And I've heard my brother-in-law been doing that lately. You know, he's a rampant alcoholic, and smashed up his home, smashed up his marriage, my sister's marriage. Anyway, cut a long story short, he don't go to meetings anymore. He says, you know, well, I can spend more time with my kids and with his kid, and I really don't need those meetings no more. And you know, some people need them, some people don't need them. I'm one of them who don't need them. You know, I kind of moved on a bit, and I'm sitting out in a restaurant in Beijing, listening to this, you know, what I perceive as a load of nonsense. And I'm thinking, is he drinking already? You know, I'm judging the guy. I'm thinking, if he ain't drinking already, he's thinking about drinking already. You know. And so what the point I'm trying to make is that when I come to NA, I was very suspicious. A lot of information about a lot of people saying a lot of things, a lot of therapeutic kind of stuff was bounded about where I got clean over in West London. And you know, I thought the route to kind of out of active addiction was into therapy or counselling, or I thought it really had something to do with my kind of childhood traumas, or, you know, my upbringing, or my parents, or my brother was a junkie, you know. But when I got into NA, what I heard was, first of all, I heard, you know, that do I want to live or die? And secondly was like, your recovery is your life. That is it. That is it for me. That's a big one, you know, because I thought, you know, that I was like these other guys who were talking about kind of doing the 12 steps, you know, graduating, social drinking, bridge to normal livingdom, wherever that fucking may be, excuse my language, and then, I guess a perception that, maybe that it weren't a drug problem after all, I don't know about that, that's what I heard when I come around. But what I realised was that this had to be my life. And that was the first kind of rude awakening, if you like. That was the first coming to understand that actually there is no turning back now. My choices were very kind of limited. My choices were jails, institution, and the only one I hadn't done right to the bitter end was death. I'd OD'd many times. That was my choice. The other choice was to get involved in NA, to start working the steps and start living this to the best of my ability. That's not a get-out clause. That is not a get-out clause to the best of your ability or my ability. The best of my ability is on any given day. I can run NA on my own on one of my better days, and on my worst day, you won't get a murmur out of me. You will not get any help whatsoever. I will not pick up your phone call. I will not talk to the newcomer. So it's the best of my ability on any given day. And what goes with that, I learned here as well, which was part of a spiritual awakening for me, was that I am not fucking perfect. Far, far from it. This is not a race, a competition. This is not about being the best. Everything that went against the grain for me, that's what it was. Because I thought life was about that. I thought life was all so competitive and so kind of, I had the disease of addiction, which told me pretty much every day that I was not worth too much, not worth love, not worth care. He didn't articulate this to me. It was just an ongoing kind of thing in my head and in my heart. And it was, it was all that stuff that got me here in the first place. Because I got to NA didn't mean it was going to kind of go, Watching that clock now, and I'm trying to think, I ain't even said nothing. Coming to NA didn't mean it was going to go. What it said to me was, there are choices that you can make here. Now you're clean. The choices that I had when I was using were about where my next bit of gear was and where I could get it. Choices now that I was clean was about, do I enter into this life? Do I take the responsibility that goes with being a member of NA? I didn't understand that at the time. I've grown to understand that now, this is a precious, precious, unbelievable, profound kind of thing, Narcotics Anonymous. Absolutely, you can't outthink this, outgrow it, get round it, This is all consuming this. And the beauty of it is the longer you stick around, the more depth there is in it, the more profound it becomes, the less you understand what you know about it. For me, the series of rude awakenings were through the steps. We're absolutely through the steps. And I didn't. I'm not a duck to water. This for me in the early days, years of recovery was all about. And I had this in my head. And it's probably another negative aspect of the illness, but I had it in my head that this was against the grain for me. Because ultimately, I got the illness, I got the disease of addiction, the stinking thinking, if you like. I'm riddled, I feel it down to the nerve endings in my bones on some day. I've got no qualms about, have I got it? I've got no luxury thoughts about that. Have I got the illness? Maybe, maybe not. It was very plain to me once I started working the steps. The rude awakening was there, step one, Had no power, could not stop using, wanted to stop using, tried everything to stop using, could not stop using, kept on hurting people, kept on hurting myself, relentlessly, 24/7, fucking hard work. And a reminder of where the power was, step two. Getting a God in my life, thank God, getting something that would heal me. No human stuff could do that. No amount of step work could get rid of my defects. It was a God of my understanding, not your God, not a religious God, not a chair of the leg God. It was a God of my understanding that I had to graft and become comfortable with and get on my knees occasionally, in them early days and make sure no one was looking, That was how it was for me. I pray openly now. I've got no problems. Why would I deny myself a God? Why would I deny myself something that's going to save my arse? And then to reveal myself and get the truth out in the open. And I've just done a 4 and 5. And I don't like parts of me. I like parts of me. I've turned parts of me around. That is profound, to turn stuff that was destroying me into stuff that makes me who I am. The tenacity and the anger. I was really angry driven and rage driven, And to turn that stuff around and kind of make it part of my makeup, put all that energy and all that power into doing some good, putting something out there that's good gear rather than shit, and then to kind of have people point out where I need to be working harder, what I need to come to an understanding with, around defects, and understanding I'm far from perfect, These things will come back at me just when I think I've got one nailed. I always remember a guy describing it, a friend of mine, Chris, he always used to describe it as those, at the fair you used to get a big hammer, and these kind of clowns or things used to pop their heads up and used to smash them down, and every time one went down another one come up, and that was his analogy. There'd always be defects around. From my experiences, they did dilute and they diminish and they kind of become noticeable when they come back up, so they're noticeable by their absence, and to kind of again draw on a God, to draw on God, ask God again, to keep me going with this stuff, kind of talked a lot about the steps, about getting to the truth, understanding the defects, understanding how they work, trying to make amends. I was talking to someone yesterday about an amends that I just can't do. I just cannot, and my sponsor said to me, and I think he got it out of a book because most of his knowledge comes from his sponsor and out of books, and he said, those amends you've got to put in 3 kind of compartments. And I probably conveniently forgot 1 or 2 of them, but it was something like the ones you're not ever going to make, the ones that you might make, and the ones that you will, and your list will be according, and the ongoing amends, and staying clean. My brother, bless him, he's been using since he's 16, and he's now 55, and he's still using, and I'm clean 16 years plus now, that's not anything to do with me, that's to do with NA, that's where I'm meant to be. And I go around and see him in the early days, and he says about carrying a message of recovery, and it's a good analogy, because I'd sit down and get him under the pretense of watching Arsenal with someone on the telly round on Sky Telly, get him there, plot him up, and I've got the doors all locked, and then I'm getting to work on him now, So have you had enough, when's it ever going to be all over for you then, son? Because, and then I'd go into my big number about my rock bottom and how desperate and hopeless I was. And he'd be kind of looking at me, and he always carried a bag, a big holdall, which all had all his tackle and his workses, and he'd always have this holdall and he'd be like looking at me and kind of slowly start putting his hand on his holdall, like getting his kind of defences up, and he knew I was grafting him, and he knew I was clean. He knew I used exactly the same as him. He knew I went out with him thieving, I went out with him scoring, I went, in the same places, jails, but at different times with him. I lived with him, he was my flesh, he was my blood, and I had stopped using, age 30 years of age. He's continued to use. And I realised, as much as I want to give this to everyone, as much as I want people to have this and understand this, if people are not ready, you just can't give it. You can't give it. And I used to love the stories they used to talk about in AA where they used to get a crew of them in a car and kind of head down a Bowery, wherever that is. Seemed like this dark, horrible place with all these dodgy people about. They used to head down there and kind of jump out and grab a few of these alcoholics, fuck them in the motor, and I always had visions. I bet they put them in the boot, boot them up and take them down and get them well and feed them and keep them in their houses and give them this fucking recovery, make them well. And, romantic notion really, because my experience of that is if people don't want it, the amount of friends I've bumped into and arranged to meet at meetings, outside meetings, the amount of people who know I'm clean, and if they don't want it, you can't give it to them, And I've learned, with sponsorship and sponsees and and this is my awakening, this is no one else's spiritual. I've learned that I can, if people want it, I can give them as much time and energy as I can, because there's benefit to be had. And once we can, give our experience to anyone, and it does save, the addict 2 days clean helping the addict 1 day clean, As a result of these steps, I think it means in the general terms, not as a result of me working 12 steps entirely. I think it means, for my opinion is, as a result of these steps being formulated, the experience that goes with these 12 steps is that you can start immediately carrying a message of recovery to the addict who still suffers. Important stuff, really important stuff. There's still a million places. It never ceases to amaze me that I saw a girl who's over in a homeless hostel in Whitechapel. This fantastic new building. It's cost millions and millions, and they got flats in there, and they got dormitories, and it's to get homeless people involved and get them off the streets and give them some direction and da da da. And I said, they got an NA. Have you got a problem poster in there? She went, no. Fucking Whitechapel, middle of the fucking frontline territory here, new building, no NA poster. I said, I'll get in touch with PI. That takes me a week or two to get my head round to it, blah, blah, blah. Eventually they'll have one there, That's carrying the message. Turning up, putting your arse in that chair, putting money in the pot or not, that's carrying a message. We cannot, if our numbers aren't what they need to be, we can't recover. If there's not a vast array of experience in there, we're limited. I remember this geezer done a chair, and I'll finish on this. He'd done a chair at the London Convention. It's really another point and part of my recovery. Because a lot of stuff I knew about, a lot of stuff I knew in my heart, I knew what was right. That's what I got when I got here. And understanding, right, this is right for you, this is not right. This is, how do I used to put it like this. I don't know what I need so much, but I really know what I don't need. And that was my way of kind of dealing with it. But I was sitting in this place, 10 years clean I was or something, I was sitting there and this geezer stood up and he went, I have no career or something. I don't know if it's the first line. Maybe he didn't even say that. Maybe he said something totally different. If you've got my thinking and hearing, it might have been something totally... But he said, I have no career. He said, this is what I do. This is all I do. This is everything I do. I come to wherever and I share my experience, strength and hope. And I hope that someone grabs onto one word, one sentence, one bit of laughter that carries them to the next meeting, to the next, encounter with another recovering addict. That's what I do. Primary purpose. I only understood that, then. And that rocked me down to my boots. Because, the illness was always telling me I was fucked and weren't enough anyway. And now it was telling me, well, actually, Paul, you're a self-centred, fucking self-seeking, 10-year clean recovering addict as well, And you're in a bit of a rut, mate, and you need to be pulling your socks up. And I guess that's what they talk about, vigilance, Keeping doing it, keeping chipping away at it, keeping coming back regardless of how I feel, what my head says, what you think, what they think, just to keep on keeping on with this. And the results for me have been, I've major bad days. I've had an incredibly fucked up week, totally powerless week that I refused to hand over. Well, I handed it over and snatched it back immediately on many occasions. But inside, in my heart, if that's the spiritual awakening, the lighting of the spirit, the awakening of the spirit, then that's what I've got out of doing this. Absolute. I find myself standing on corners when it feels like my world is falling down. I find myself, and it only happened just really, I stood on a corner and I find myself smirking, just kind of a little smirking. There might be some sunshine, there might not, but I find myself smirking and I think, fucking hell, in all of this, my fellowship, my fucking recovery, I've got the fucking lot, the absolute lot. And it says, God, I could talk for a couple of hours now, but it says also, and I had a bit of a straightener, I'll finish on this. I had a bit of a, not a straightener, I mean a bit of a set to with a guy who said, well, it's a selfish program. I'm like, no, it ain't a selfish program. No, it's far from a selfish program. No, it's a selfish program, because if I don't do what I need to do, I don't get a meeting, I. I was like, oh, God, patience. It's a we program. It's we. And by giving of myself, by coming here, not having to understand what I'm doing, not having to kind of comprehend everything that goes on in my head, just doing, action. By the doing, I help myself. That's it. By the doing for others, I help myself. That's absolutely fantastic. That's awesome. And not being a fool, hopefully. Other people might have their opinions about that. But not being a complete fool. I understand that. I understand the more you put in, the more you get out. And keep coming back. It's everything you've ever dreamed of is here and more. And the peace of mind and the awakening of the heart. The awakening of the heart. And the love and the people in this fellowship is, it's bottomless. Anyway, thank you for letting me share. I've gone over. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul. The format of this meeting